Order. I now call the Standing Committee on Public Accounts to order. My name is Kelly Regan. I'm the MLA for Bedford Basin and the chair of this committee. Quick reminder to all of us to place our phones on silent. And now I'll ask the committee members to introduce themselves, beginning with the vice chair.
Good morning, everybody. Nolan Young, MLA for Shelburne.
MLA Taggart.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Tom Taggart, MLA for Colchester North.
MLA McDonald.
Good morning, Johnny McDonald, MLA for Hants East.
MLA Sheehy Richard.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm Melissa Sheehy Richard, and I'm the MLA for Hants West.
MLA Lachance.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lachance. I'm the MLA for Halifax, Citadel, Sable Island.
MLA LeBlanc.
Morning, Susan LeBlanc, MLA for Dartmouth North.
MLA McGuire.
Good morning, everyone. Brandon McGuire, Halifax Atlantic.
MLA Barkhouse.
Good morning, everyone. Danielle Barkhouse, MLA for the beautiful Chester St. Margaret's.
On today's agenda, we have officials with us from the Departments of Environment and Climate Change, Municipal Affairs and Housing and Public Works, and the Emergency Management Office regarding climate change adaptation, EMO funding and preparedness for emergency disasters in Nova Scotia, and output-based pricing systems for industry. I'm going to ask witnesses to introduce themselves, and we will begin with the witness on the far right, my far right, Mr. Weatherby.
Yeah, Anthony Weatherby, Director of Climate Change Mitigation for the province.
Deputy McEachern.
Hi, everyone. Laura McEachern, Deputy Minister, Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Murphy.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Murphy, Associate Deputy Minister with Environment and Climate Change.
Deputy Rafuse.
Good morning. Byron Rafuse, Deputy Minister, Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Mr. Mason.
Paul Mason, Executive Director of the Emergency Management Office.
Ms. McClellan.
Good morning, Tanya McClellan, Executive Director for Building Infrastructure with Public Works.
Deputy Hackett.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Hackett, Deputy Minister of Public Works.
Mr. DeVoe. Good
morning, everyone. Guy DeVoe, Executive Director, Maintenance and Operations for the Highway Programs.
And not seated at the table, but seated in behind is Mr. Peachy, who maybe can just wave. Thank you, Mr. Peachy. Because we have a cast of thousands today. So I will invite Deputy McEachern to make opening remarks.
Thanks very much. It's my pleasure to join you today with my colleagues from Environment and Climate Change, Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Emergency Management Office, and Public Works. Thank you for inviting us for this important discussion. Climate change is our most pressing global emergency, and this past year was pivotal, both in the impacts we experienced and the work being done to change the course of our future as we work towards achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Our role at Environment and Climate Change is to set high-level climate change policy, build awareness of the impacts we need to prepare for, coordinate adaptation strategies, and lead provincial action to help Nova Scotians adapt. One of Public Works' key roles is to make provincially owned and operated infrastructure more climate resilient. Municipal Affairs and Housing, along with EMO, support communities in responding to climate impacts through emergency preparedness, providing direct support to municipalities, such as floodline maps, updating the building code, and making public housing more energy efficient. This summer was a heartbreaking reminder of the destruction and loss that climate change can cause right here at home in Nova Scotia. However, we also saw the resilience, grit, and resolve that Nova Scotians are known for. The wildfires and flooding represent what we can expect to continue to see more of. Our climate change risk assessment confirms this. So action is critical and is happening, both mitigation and adaptation. Overall, government has invested approximately $282 million on climate change initiatives over the past 2.5 years. We're making our ambitious targets set out in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act and strong progress on our 68 actions in the Climate Change Plan. The new Clean Power Plan will help us even more in achieving this transition. On the mitigation front, Nova Scotia is showing national leadership in greenhouse gas emission reduction and decarbonization. For example, we created the output-based pricing system to hold large industry and Nova Scotia Power accountable for reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, which account for about 50% of our provincial emissions. It is a key part of our path to net zero, along with electrifying how we heat our homes and our transportation systems. We're also helping Nova Scotians make their homes energy efficient, and the shift to clean, renewable energy is well on its way. Approximately $223 million has been invested in energy efficiency programming over the past 2.5 years. We are also continuing our work to protect our coast and the people and homes along it. Government has been clear that they will take action on the best and most effective way to protect people, homes, infrastructure, and natural areas on our coast. To deliver on this critical need, municipalities in the province will each have key roles. We are a coastal province, and people love our coast. They want to live safely by it and want the natural areas of our coast protected. Nova Scotians can have confidence that we know how important this is, and collectively, we need to get it right. I think all Nova Scotians are united in having the same goal for our communities, for them to be safe, green, healthy, sustainable, and resilient. Protecting our coast and homes and people on it is a key part of having resilient and strong communities. And while we're hard at work on mitigation, we know we will continue to be impacted by global climate change impacts like storms, warming ocean temperatures, and wildfires as a result of the emissions of the past. That makes adaptation and strengthening the resiliency of our homes, infrastructure, communities, and natural areas more important than ever. The good news is that Nova Scotians are already adapting. They're making themselves aware and informed of the risks and taking action to prevent or lessen the impacts. Enhancing resiliency is a shared responsibility with the province, the federal government, municipalities, the private sector, and Nova Scotians all having a role. So how do we adapt and become more resilient? Some ways are to rethink how and where we build. Planning, zoning, and building with climate resiliency in mind, and using nature-based solutions to help protect us from flooding, fires, and storms. To help create more nature-based solutions, government has committed to protecting 20% of our land and water by 2030. We'll release a protected areas strategy by the end of December, and last December provided an additional $20 million to the Nova Scotia Crown Land Share Legacy Trust to assist conservation organizations in protecting more land, wetlands, and water. We also just signed a nature agreement with the federal government, which flows $28.5 million to Nova Scotia to help protect more of these natural areas. At Environment and Climate Change, we're creating more resources to help communities become resilient and adapt. For example, we now have flood and stormwater experts to support communities in reducing flooding. We have a new funding navigator who can help connect communities with funding programs. We created the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund to provide municipalities, community groups, Mi'kmaq communities, and post-secondary schools with funding to respond to and prepare for climate change. And government has just doubled the size of that fund. Government is making progress on the 18 adaptation actions from the Climate Change Plan. And we have a climate services specialist in place whose role it is to provide training and information to municipalities, industry associations, community groups, and businesses to help them understand how our climate is changing, determine what it means for them, and how best to adapt. And if you'd like more information on any of these resources for your communities, please let us know. In closing, Madam Chair, significant work is underway to address the climate emergency. Make no mistake, it will take all of us working together to achieve this important goal, but we are confident Nova Scotians can do so. And with that, we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister McEachern. And just for the committee members, we usually limit opening remarks to 5 minutes, but because Deputy Minister McEachern was speaking on behalf of 3 departments and an office, I gave her some leeway there. So just so folks know. Okay, so we will now begin questioning. Each caucus will have 20 minutes, and we will begin with the Liberal caucus. MLA McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a lot of questions, so we're just trying to I'll try to keep my questions short and the answers short too, if possible. So I'll start with my colleague from Hammonds Plain. One of the issues that they had during the fire was getting out of the community. There's only one single road in and one single road out. Obviously, this is an issue. During the last hurricane, West Pennant Road was washed out. People in West Pennant were trapped. There's no way in, no way out. In my community, though it's a loop, you cut off Ketch Harbor Road, you cut off Old Samber Road, people, that's it. So I guess I'll start with Mr. Mason. What is EMO doing, and are they working in partnership with HRM to deal with these issues? Because this is potentially, as we saw during the wildfires, life-threatening.
Mr. Mason.
Thank you. Yeah, we are definitely working with HRM and all of our municipal partners on this issue. We're certainly aware it's been, a point of attention certainly since the wildfires and also the floods as well. So ultimately, when it comes to evacuations, those are administered at the municipal level. What we're doing to help support them in that is through our training and exercising regime. One of the things we're doing specifically with regard to evacuations is we've been working closely with some of our counterparts in the United States in FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they have specialized training and exercising regime specifically targeted at municipal evacuations. So our training and exercise division is working to develop a specific program for that, which we anticipate will be ready over the winter, and then we'll be able to roll that out and conduct that training with municipalities generally. Ultimately, with regard to the current state where there may be, subdivisions or other communities that only have single points of egress and entry and exit per se, we'll work with the municipalities to inform their municipal plans. Ultimately, their plan should take that into account and factor in those evacuation processes. But it's challenging, but we'll be working closely with them on it.
MLA McGuire.
And I do appreciate that. I appreciate the challenge. And I would also like to say, like when it came to West Pennant Road, Department of Public Works was there within an hour. And they had filled the road in, and people were able to get in and out. So, big thank you to the department for stepping up immediately. But the truth is that communities like West Pennant, for example, can be a pretty senior community, and people already have transportation issues, and so it's pretty scary when these things happen. And so, I think there has to be a plan that's communicated. We're heading into hurricane season. We're heading into snowstorm season. All that stuff. Probably something that should have been done in the past, but here we are. I think that we do have to have better communication so people know how to get in and out. So thank you for that. That's what I wanted to start with. So I just want to take a moment and talk about the Coastal Protection Act. I don't know who that would be, Deputy. Where are we at on if you could do quickly, where are we at on the Coastal Protection Act?
Deputy McEachern.
Yes, absolutely appreciate the question. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge how important coastal protection is and government's commitment on that topic. It's definitely known that this is important and something we need to move forward on, as was reflected in my opening comments. So the engagement that we've been talking about has just ended last week, and so government spent some extra time contacting and reaching out to coastal property owners. That was an area that hadn't been focused on in previous engagements. So that coastal protection focus on coastal property owners has just completed, and we're gathering together the information, and we'll have more to say on that in the near future.
MLA McGuire.
I want to thank you for that. And so the reason why it's obviously extremely important, and there are some examples that we see, you know, in my community, for example, during the hurricane, people along the Northwest Arm Drive, some of them much closer than they should be, had severe flooding, had parts of their property washed away. Lawrencetown, I always think of that example of Lawrencetown. I don't know if you know, if anyone here remembers, I think they may have moved the graveyard that was there. I don't know if you remember does anyone remember the coffins that were sticking out over the cliff because the cliff had eroded so much? So I think of those kind of things that in the past where individuals built so close to the shore. Right now, am I able to build right up to the shore? Is there like a moratorium on it or a wait on it because of consultation happening?
Deputy McEachern?
Well, so appreciate that question. You know, there'd be a number of factors in determining whether there is an ability to construct up to the shore. That would depend on zoning requirements that relate to the municipality. It would depend on whether, you know, that construction intruded into to a beach area or onto Crown land under the realm of the Crown Lands Act or the Beaches Act. So there'd be a number of considerations that would be that would factor into that. So it would really be a matter for that individual, you know, working with their site professional and finding out, you know, what those requirements are. And certainly we have people at the Department of Environment and Climate Change, the local office, that can provide some guidance, as well as natural resources and renewables.
MLA McGuire.
So quickly, so what you're saying is this is essentially, if you're building that close, it's a partnership with the municipality and the zoning rules of the municipality that you live in that play a large part on whether you can build that close to the shore or not.
Deputy McEachern.
So again, it's always very site specific, and so it's important for any landowner who's considering building in any location to find out, you know, what the parameters are by contacting the municipal office, by reaching out to our Environment and Climate Change Regional Office and other relevant government and federal departments, just to find out what the requirements are. And certainly they can work with their site professionals, they can work with their real estate agent and others, their surveyors, lawyer as well. So there's a variety of things to take into consideration, and that would be the case building on the coast and in building other places in the province.
And right on cue, MLA McGuire.
So, one of the thoughts that just popped in my head is if I'm going to buy a piece of land, let's say I live in Herring Cove and I'm going to buy a piece of land in Herring Cove close to the shoreline or part of the shoreline. Is there potential that, like, today I can build and then tomorrow I can't, like a changing because of the Coastal Protection Act? So I think that's something that people need to be made aware of. Like when you talk about real estate agents and individuals that are building, is there potential in the near future for someone who purchased or invested in a piece of land to have it turn around and say, no, even though you bought that land and you plan on building there, you can no longer build there?
Deputy McEachern.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think that that's a really important point, and that is the reason why, you know, we are engaging. Government has taken this extra time to engage with coastal property owners because, you know, there was a variety of questions that were coming into the department and coming in through local MLAs by coastal property owners, saying they didn't understand the legislation that was passed and not yet proclaimed. That they had questions about it. They didn't know how it applied to them. They didn't know how soon it might take effect. So there was a lot of questions that were coming forward and some uncertainty. And so with that, some time has been taken to provide them with more information, to seek their voice. So that has happened, and we're in the process of compiling that. So I do think that's important, and all of the information that we gain will help to inform those next steps. But in the meantime, there's still a lot happening on coastal protection and climate change in the province. So we've got a full climate action plan with 68 actions. Coastal protection is one of them, and there's many others, and we're moving forward, including with achieving our 20% land protection goal, which includes protection of land, also water and wetlands in the province. So lots happening, lots of information available to people.
Emily Maguire.
I mean, to be clear, I can't afford coastal land in Herring Cove, but I just wanted to, my question, I think, this one may go to the Department of Transportation, Public Works, and it's a question that it's an issue that I've discussed with the department many times over the years, and it's around breakwater infrastructure. Some of you may be familiar with these conversations that we've had. I know that this is a federal / potentially provincial partnership. We do know that a lot of the breakwaters, most people may think that this is just a rural issue, but it's not just a rural issue. In my community, for example, and a lot of communities in HRM, we are on the coast, and we do have older breakwater infrastructure. I look at Ketch Harbor, where that infrastructure no longer is appropriate, and it doesn't meet the needs. And so with surging water levels, with stronger and stronger storms, these breakwaters are no longer holding up. It's causing damage. Roads to be washed out, bridges to be destroyed, and this is having a huge impact on the bottom line of not just your department but of the province, because you have to go in there and repair these things. So my question is has there been any discussion with the department and the obviously federal government, because you're going to need federal partners on this one, on some kind of program to upgrade the breakwaters across Nova Scotia to make them more suitable for the weather patterns that we are seeing now?
And just before I go to the department, Emily Maguire, you have 9 minutes left. Your time will be up at 9:30. So, Deputy Hackett?
I can start. So many of the breakwaters that you're talking about would be protection for wharfs and sort of coastal structures, right? So they're not necessarily built for protection of the roadway or the bridges. We're sort of a supplement of that, and I guess a beneficiary of that. And some of the ones that you're talking about, the federal government who look after them, sometimes through our partners at DNR, they've applied for federal funding, and there has been some federal conversations about repairing those breakwaters, but breakwater systems, but mostly for the infrastructure that it's basically there for. So if it's for a wharf, it's for fishing communities, that sort of thing. Hasn't been too much discussion that I know of. I'm going to ask my colleague here, Mr. DeVoe, that question, but hasn't been too much discussion on breakwaters with regard to our own infrastructure. But if it does affect something, if there's a breakwater that is beneficial to our infrastructure, and we see that, we will try to work with the partners who own that breakwater to repair it or upgrade it for our benefit. And I'm just going to ask Guy DeVoe. Go ahead.
Emily Maguire.
Before we go to Mr. DeVoe, I want to add on to the question. I figured that it was going to go to Guy because I think I've picked your brain many times on this stuff. But I do know that in the past, in discussions I've had with the department, that the feds were looking to divest themselves of some of these breakwaters, especially the older ones, which kind of leaves these breakwaters in limbo. So my question to add to that to Mr. DeVoe is, are the feds still moving forward with the divestiture of these vital infrastructure? And is there any conversation to slow that down to say, like, I know Mr. Hackett, Deputy Hackett, talked about the protection of wharves. Obviously, wharves are I look at the one in Herring Cove, which the pilot boats use, and we saw when the breakwater in Herring Cove failed, it did severe damage to that wharf. But it also does have an impact on our roads and stuff, like the deputy said. So is anyone in conversation to say to the feds, wait, hold on, slow down, like, let's not divest ourselves of these things like they did the lighthouses, and let's invest in these things because they are going to be an important piece of infrastructure when it comes to climate change.
Mr. DeVoe, 6 minutes.
Thank you. As far as I know, I haven't been approached by the federal government or anyone on the breakwater type of reinforcement. As Minister Hackett pointed out, I believe that that's more around small crafts harbors. I don't doubt that some of those might have or bring benefit to provincial roads. We will do our share of shoreline protection in certain areas by placing armor rock and things like that. However, when it comes to the breakwaters itself, I have no knowledge on that.
MLA McGuire.
I appreciate that. And again, I've been the benefactor. We've had the benefits of the rocks and everything there, and obviously when we get a strong surge, those rocks end up on the other side of the road, or they end up doing damage too. So I think it might be something. It's definitely something worth having the conversations, and maybe this is something that we should all be talking to our MPs about, to be frank with you. Just a quick, I'm wondering if somebody could give us an update on the plan for the Shinnecock
Isthmus.
Yeah.
Deputy Hackett.
So thank you for the question. This is more of an update you're looking for than an answer to a question. But you probably are aware the Shinnecock Isthmus is an important part of it's an important part of land, I guess, that connects Nova Scotia to New Brunswick, and it is a low-lying piece of land between the two provinces, and it runs, I think, something like $30-some billion worth of economic goods through there a year. But not to mention, it also is a part of Nova Scotia service law of New Brunswick for certain services, like things like the IWK and universities, and reciprocal to other provinces with us. So there's quite a bit of activity through that area. It's a low-lying area. It is something that obviously we're monitoring and can be susceptible to damage during a storm or a large event. The dike system there was studied a few years back. We did a report in conjunction with the federal government and New Brunswick, and the report came back that the dike system needed to be raised by a certain amount of feet. And so we're currently working with New Brunswick on a plan to what that would look like to do that work over the next 10 years. We've also filed a application to DMAF jointly between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia for federal funding for that project, and we're waiting to hear back from the feds on approval of that. And just coincidentally, I'm heading to New Brunswick this afternoon to meet with my counterpart from New Brunswick, the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, there to talk about the Shinnecock Isthmus.
3 minutes. MLA McGuire.
Appreciate that. So that has got me thinking a little bit. Obviously, the cost to upgrade it is going to be extensive. Is the Department of Public Works working with the Department of Environment and Climate Change around a plan and a costing of upgrading the infrastructure in Nova Scotia to deal with, and I'll leave that to Deputy McCachran, around to upgrade our infrastructure in Nova Scotia to deal with weather patterns and climate change. And Deputy Hackett talked about low-lying roads and things like that. These are all over Nova Scotia where these are going to be major problems. So has there been any thought or planning on what's going to need to happen and what the price tag is going to be? Because obviously with this kind of stuff, we're going to need municipal and federal partners too. So,
Deputy McCachran, 2 minutes.
So yes, thanks for the question. Yes, there absolutely has been consideration of that. If you take a look at the climate change plan, there's a whole section that has actions around, moving forward to, moving forward in a strong direction around upgrading infrastructure and working towards making buildings more resilient due to the impacts of climate change. So yes, that is a key part of our work. I also would mention that we've invested in some additional resources that will help the other government departments and communities. So I mentioned in my opening comments about stormwater engineer has recently been hired, a new flood adaptation adaptation coordinator. So these are some key new resources that have just been employed by the department and will be available to do the kind of support work that's required. So that's what we're all about is environment and climate change, is making sure that everyone's aware of the policy and the impacts and providing that support that's needed in order to get the work done.
50 seconds. MLA McGuire.
Is there a price tag? Have you looked at the financial cost of doing this work? So I'm just looking for a number, a roundabout number, that this is potentially obviously going to have to be cost shared, but is there a cost? Has anyone looked at the cost to do these kind of upgrades and what we need to move this province forward to protect it from climate change?
Deputy McEachern.
So thanks very much. We certainly have, a fully funded climate plan, and we'll be rolling that out now and over the next couple of years. And in terms of, exact details of the various infrastructure in the province and what's required to upgrade that, certainly folks down the table, Public Works would be better positioned to be able to give that kind of detail.
Order. Time for the Liberal questioning has elapsed. We now move on to the NDP Caucus and MLA Lachance.
Thank you. I think I might start with Deputy Minister McEachern. In terms of the recent Coastal Protection Act consultations, so I'm aware that the number that was floated was 40,000 people. There were 40,000 people to contact. I'm wondering how many responses you got, or how many engagements, however you might count that, and if you have information on how many of those folks had already participated in consultations around the Act.
Deputy McEachern.
Thanks very much for the question, and certainly can appreciate the interest in that information will become available as soon as we gather it. So the consultation just closed last week, and so we're working with a third-party vendor to compilate all of the information and feedback that was received, and that work's happening now. And over the next period of time, we'll come before the minister and provide him with that detailed information and look at next steps.
MLA Lachance.
So I wanted to ask, what is the working definition, without proclaiming the Act, what is the definition of vulnerable coastal areas in Nova Scotia, and where does that authority rest? On a provincial level, and yeah, I'm really interested on a provincial level, so I understand the difference between municipalities, but really provincially, what's the definition? And do we know within that provincial definition how many properties have been developed in the last 4 or 5 years in sort of vulnerable or sensitive coastal areas?
Deputy McEachern.
So again, thanks very much for the question. And my first thoughts in terms of responding to it is, the importance of highlighting our climate risk assessment. And so it is really a key document. We released it around this time last year, and it really does provide that kind of information about, what we're going to likely see going forward in Nova Scotia in terms of potential risks, on our coast and across our province. And so that's a key document that we're trying to get out there, trying to, help people to understand the risks and take the necessary action. And that really is a guidance for us. It should be a guidance for communities, municipalities, and we're working to get that out there. So that's a key piece in terms of answering the question. The other thing wanted to mention in terms of information that's available that helps sort of guide that understanding about coastal properties, coastal risks is Climate Atlantic. And so we invest in that central information hub, and we've got a climate services specialist on staff at the department that works with Climate Atlantic and is out there providing this kind of data and this information about, what's happening on the coastline, what those risks are going forward, and what people and communities can be really careful about. So that's some key pieces of information that we have available to help inform people and help inform municipalities. And it really is, sort of all hands on deck on this topic. Definitely the province has a role, and we take that really seriously and is committed committed to taking action on coastal protection, and there's others that have roles as well, key to that being the municipalities. And so we're calling on sort of everyone to step up, and absolutely the province will do its part, and we are doing that in terms of the information that we have available and the steps that we're taking so far on coastal protection.
MLA Lachance.
And so maybe it's hard to quantify, sort of how many properties have been developed in the past number of years in sort of vulnerable coastal areas. But the work that you're, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, Climate Services, is that the role? Climate Services person does, has the department been aware of any developments or any building along the coastline that has been cause for concern, and has your climate services manager reported any do they intervene if they're concerned about what's happening and what decisions are happening by municipalities or private developers?
Deputy McEachern.
So thanks. Thanks very much. Our goal is to protect Nova Scotians from the impacts of climate change and the impacts that climate change is having on the coast. And so, our work is really about, all of the efforts that are required to, move forward the province in a good way to address the impacts of climate change. So we're really focused on the 68 actions in the climate plan. Coastal protection is absolutely one of those important actions, and we're focused on that. And we're focused on the 67 others that we know are so important to be able to deal with this. And so, we want to hear from those coastal property owners. And as was mentioned, we had heard that through previous engagement that those coastal property owners had things to say, that they had questions, they had more perspective that they wanted to be able to provide to the government, and the kinds of questions that you're asking now. And we certainly hope that through this engagement we'll be able to find out that additional information about more about what's happening on the coast, and so we can all move forward in a really positive and effective way to protect Nova Scotians, because we know they care about the coast, and those are the steps that we want to take to protect it.
MLA Lachance, just under 14 minutes.
Okay. I sense we've probably gotten to the end of this discussion, but if there are any examples you have of where your climate services person has raised alarms or others in the department have raised concerns about development that you can provide later, that would be interesting to know about. And just in terms of the Coastal Protection Act, so you're compiling the results of this consultation, which I guess, my question's around how many people actually participated and how many were repeat participants, because obviously coastal land owners were not excluded from previous consultations. So, I guess, I'll be looking for the numbers in terms of the value of reopening that consultation, and what value added that had. But in terms of timelines, just really quickly, so what do you expect to happen with the regulations following this consultation? So what's the timeline from the close of the consultations last week to regulations being available in the Act being ready to go?
Deputy McEachern.
Oh, yes. So thanks again. So we're working on compiling the information now. As I mentioned, we have a third-party vendor that's working with us, and so we have a small but dedicated team working on that in the department. So that work is happening now, and we hope to be in a position to brief the minister on that in December. And following that, some decisions will be made on next steps.
MLA Lachance.
And actually, just one more question before we move away from the Coastal Protection Act. So in terms of, what do you see as some of the key actions that would be provided for under the Act that might help with issues around flooding? So, I'm going to turn some of my questions to, learning from the flood experiences we had this year. So within the Coastal Protection Act, is there anything that you would like to be able to do that would help protect or mitigate against flooding that you don't have access to yet?
Deputy McEachern?
Well, certainly a focus on coastal protection, whether it's in the form of a legislation or if it's, in some other manner. Focusing on coastal protection is important because it helps people understand about the risks of building too close to the coast with an awareness and understanding that our climate risk assessment says that, flooding and certain other extreme weather events are likely to consistently occur over the next period of time as we move forward to take important action to address climate change. So that's what coastal protection is all about, and it's steps that can be taken through legislation. It can also be taken through information, awareness. It can be taken through, all sectors, taking the appropriate steps at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels. So that's what it can do. But there's other matters, as I said, we're working on as well. Just hired a stormwater engineer. We've just hired, additional expertise in flooding. There's floodline mapping efforts that are occurring across the province. So there's a variety of actions that are happening, all associated with our climate action plan that will all help with the effects that we're feeling here in Nova Scotia with flooding and coastal impacts.
Just under 10 minutes, MLA Lachance.
Thank you. And I think it is really good to hear about the increased capacity in certain areas that the department is able to be responsive to that, because obviously, there's such a high level of expertise that's needed to act in these areas. I'm actually going to switch along that lines. I'm going to switch to Municipal Affairs and Housing, so to Deputy Minister Rayfuse. We just completed the legislative session. Bill 329 consolidated decision-making power around development and HRM in the hands of the minister. Do you feel the department has sufficient planning staff and capacity to consider development applications, and particularly with a view to protecting coastline and climate change adaptation?
Deputy Rayfuse?
Thank you for the question. One of the things I find about that piece of legislation is that some elements are kind of misunderstood. So with the change in the authority for the minister, their underlying principles of planning and development approval processes has not changed. Developers must go through that process. The only thing that's really eliminated is the final decision-making process, which can come to the minister, or if the council is not choosing to do so. So in that effect, we don't need to increase our planning capacity at the department. We do have planning resources, but our resources are geared towards more around facilitating the municipalities' planning efforts by giving guidance or frameworks or floodline mapping procedures. But the municipality is not going to be devoid of their responsibility to continue out those processes, and developers will have to follow them.
MLA Lachance?
So with that being said, so just sort of help me envision what would happen. I mean, because HRM has gone through its development process, and whether that's working with communities and environmental assessments and that sort of thing. And then for some reason or another, there's this decision that the issue is taken to the minister. So there's something that's disagreed with. And so that some reason or another comes from somewhere. And so I guess I'm wondering how you anticipate being able to assess within the department any concerns or any files that are brought forward. Like, you've had all this heavy weight on the municipal side doing the work of assessment and planning, and then where does the evidence come from on the provincial side?
Deputy Rayfuse?
Again, so what would happen is, and all this kind of previously and is on the go-forward strategy, is that the municipality administration, the staff of the municipality, would be making a recommendation based on those evaluation criteria, would be making recommendations previously to the council. And now the ministry will be relying on the recommendation as previously presented to council. So there would be requirements to follow land use bylaws. There would be a consultation required according to the municipal plan. And nothing would change when we would have that information available to the department to facilitate the minister's decision.
MLA Lachance?
Actually, I'm going to cede to my colleague.
MLA LeBlanc, you have 6 minutes.
Well, thank you. I guess then the question, the elephant in the room is then why change the legislation? Why give the minister those decision-making powers if nothing else is changing? So there must be some contemplation of a time when it would be when the minister would need to step in and change things or overrule something. So can you talk to us a little bit about that contemplation? Because otherwise it doesn't make any sense that we would have spent however many terrible hours debating that legislation.
Deputy Rayfuse.
Sorry.
Certainly, I think the minister did answer that question in the House. So there has been instances in the past where staff have recommended a development agreement has gone to council and has been rejected or sent back to community council, requiring that application to go to the URIB when the developer had to choose to appeal that decision. And then in those circumstances, at the URB, which held up that process, and if you recall, we are trying to get more houses built in a faster time frame. It would go through that process, it would halt everything, and at that process, the URB, a number of times, no representation from HRM, and the URB said the decision was appropriate and the development was approved. That just wasted 12 months. That is why that element is there.
MLA LeBlanc.
Thanks. I'm actually going to change I'm going to ask some questions to Environment and Climate Change about efficiency. Efficiency in retrofit projects like the home warming project has been funded with proceeds from the cap and trade auctions in the Green Fund. So how will the funding for this be impacted by the transition to the output-based pricing system?
Deputy McEachern.
Thanks very much. We are very confident in the ability to continue to fund all of the programs. We've got an action plan that's fully funded. We're in this transition, as you know, right now, where the cap and trade program is winding down, and therefore the Green Fund is winding down. But we're in the process of fully establishing the output-based pricing system, which will generate revenue, and have set up the new climate change fund, which will replace the Green Fund. It's a fund that is set up to be able to receive revenue from OBPS, but from other sources, including general revenue, and has a wide variety of purposes that are set out in the legislation for which it can be used, all associated with climate action. So we're feeling very, very confident that the Climate Change Fund will be able to fully fund our climate plan, and we have that commitment from government.
MLA LeBlanc, 2.5 minutes.
So it's fully funded. The climate change plan is fully funded. And yes, you've mentioned before, or the department's mentioned before, that there is other streams of funding for the climate change fund, including, as you've just said now, general revenue. But last time we talked at PAC, we didn't have any other details. So are there other streams of revenue besides general revenue and the OBO, whatever it is, PS, that are coming into the climate change fund?
Deputy McEachern.
So the fund isn't fully established. It's established in legislation. We'll see revenue go into that fund later this year as OBPS gets fully up and running and the cap and trade program is fully wound down. If you look at the Environment Act, there's a provision there in those recent changes that establish the fund. There's a provision there that sets out the various sources of funding, available sources of funds that can go into the climate change fund. The two key ones are the ones that we've just talked about, but it's all set out there, as well as the various sources that the fund can be used for.
MLA LeBlanc, 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, 1.5 minutes. So I'm just going to quickly say that The income threshold for heat pump programs in other provinces is higher than we have here, 75,000 in PEI, 70,000 in New Brunswick. I'm wondering if Nova Scotia is looking at changing the income threshold for our heat pump program.
Deputy McEachern.
So thanks very much. Thanks very much. I'll take that information back and speak to Efficiency One as well as our partners at Natural Resources and Renewables. I will say that Nova Scotia has invested over $200 million in energy efficiency programming over the last 2 years, and lots of great programming and work happening there to help people transition their into heat pumps and other energy efficiencies, lots of programs, including the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund. So we're quite confident of our support and efforts on energy efficiency, but I'll take that piece back.
Emily LeBlanc, you have 20 seconds.
Okay, well, maybe you can think about this for the next time. In the recent community services meeting, we heard about the split initiative issue with people who own rental apartments and doing efficiency upgrades. And so I'm wondering, is the department looking at other ways to encourage retrofits in rentals and supporting renters who are facing increasing energy costs? Think about that. We'll get back.
Order. Time for NDP questioning has elapsed. We'll now move on to the PC Caucus, and you have until 10 after 10. MLA Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to recognize and thank the tremendous efforts during the wildfires this summer in unprecedented fires, not only across Nova Scotia but across Canada as well. And just looking back at it now, I guess my question would be around water bombers. But when the Lake Road, John Road fire broke out, I remember the water bombers coming over with the constituency office and just pummeling this, just hammering it and hammering it and hammering it relentlessly. And for that, I'm thankful and I'm grateful for the efforts. My question would be to Municipal Affairs is, why does the province not have their own water bombers, and what is being to address this for the next wildfire?
Deputy Rayfuse.
Sure.
Mr. Mason.
Sure, certainly. No, thanks for the question. Yeah, the wildfires are certainly an unprecedented experience here in Nova Scotia. Unfortunately, it's been touched on in the conversation so far today, where we're seeing more and more of these here and across Canada. With regard to the water bombers, of course, when it comes to wildfire fighting, and Natural Resources is the lead agency on that and kind of oversees that piece of the response. But I know we work closely with them in this event and generally. So I know that they're in the process of conducting an after-action report with regard to the wildfires, and I know that water bombers is certainly a part of that report, and a decision will be made on that, I would think, afterwards. Ultimately, their department will make that decision, but I know that it's being considered.
Emily Young.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. Look forward to that report. And I'll pass it off to my colleague, Emily Sheehy-Richard.
Emily Sheehy-Richard.
Thank you. I believe that the tragedies this summer and the impacts of climate change affected pretty much all of us around the side of the table, at least, and a lot of members on the other. So it's a tough one because my floods had lost a life, and a big part of that was the alerting system. And there was concerns raised about from the incident commanders and how and who can give and when the time reports can go out, the alerts can go out. And in particular, the family of the little boy, Colton Cisco, has been calling on the government to make some changes there. And I know when the Premier came down, it was what was brought up every time. So I know that it was directed by the Premier to have Nova Scotia EMO look into some improvements, and that community engagement or first responder engagement sessions have taken place, and also discussions with the CAOs on improvements at the municipal level. So I guess my question is that when could we expect an update on any changes that are going to be made to the emergency response protocols and the emergency alerting system?
Mr. Mason?
Thanks for the question. And as you noted, certainly a very tragic scenario that played out down in your area over the summer. With regard to public alerting, as you touched on, we've conducted some work on that. Just to set the context, with regard to the Alert Ready system, there's a lot of effort that goes into that piece. So I'd like to note that we conduct quarterly exercising with all of our partners, municipalities, provincial departments, police, First Nations. So every 3 months we have a session where they're all invited. We address any issues, any questions, new staff, that kind of thing. We also have a dedicated program officer who works specifically on that file, so it's certainly a high priority item within our office. With regard to the events over the summer, with regard to alerts specifically, what we did after we received direction to reach out and seek feedback basically on potential changes that could be made to the system, we conducted 6 sessions. 3 were with kind of by region per se, so by the 3 regions which we operate by the province. So for each of those regional sessions, we would have fire personnel, police personnel, elected officials, or CAOs, I should say, and First Nations from those areas. And then we went back and we conducted 3 additional sessions. The additional sessions would have been in mid-September. The initial ones would have been in late August. And really just to kind of seek feedback on how the system's working, any potential challenges that they've identified, any potential areas for improvement, how the process around getting an alert out should work. So we did gather some good feedback through that process around who can authorize an alert, kind of the process itself. So that information is being compiled. It'll flow up, of course, for an evaluation, and I would expect that there should be, some additional updates on that within the next couple of months, I would think.
Emily Sheehy-Richard.
Thank you. And I guess I want to continue on that is how is the department taking accountability and recognizing the deficiencies? How can we be sure that these are going to be addressed?
Sure.
Mr. Mason?
Yeah. With regard to that, the best way that I would frame it is really around continuous improvement. Basically, in that particular instance, when it comes to an alert, that request has to come in through the municipality. That they've got eyes on the ground, and in those types of responses, when you send an alert out, it goes to the entire county. It can't be targeted to specific areas. So the information within it needs to be aligned with the municipal response. Basically, there may be some parts of that county where you want people to evacuate. There may be other parts where you want them to shelter in place. So that needs to be factored into the process. What happened specifically in that case is obviously there were challenges around communication between the municipality and our provincial coordination center, and those communication challenges impacted the timelines on the alert. Once we got the required information, we had the alert out fairly quickly, within about 30 minutes, but it did take a while to get that information. And I think it's a combination of the event which occurred there was a very sudden and unexpected event. We were aware that rainfalls were coming, and of course, whenever we get that information, we share that with our partners, but nothing to the scale of what was predicted. And I think the particular weather system and the communication challenges that went along with it were key ingredients in that, and those variables be factored into any changes which are made in the system going forward.
Emily Sheehy-Richard.
Thank you for that answer. So I guess another big part of the tragedy was there was different areas that were impacted differently, and I'm not sure who to address this to. I think Municipal Affairs, but how are we ensuring that future developments are going to not be built where there could be potential landslide, I guess, is how it kind of happened there. It took homes off foundations from the impact of debris coming down to certain areas. As we see, this climate change and river courses are totally altered now from where they were and now blocked by all this infill. So how are we going to account for the impacts of the sedimentation runoff and increased risk of flooding from these water damage so that it doesn't impact the nearby communities as we move forward?
Deputy Rayfuse?
Thank you for that question. As you know, municipalities are required to have municipal planning plans for development, including requirements to deal with what are called statements of provincial interest. The province has a statement of provincial interest associated with flood risk areas. So they must deal with that. So to help them out with that process, the province has undertaken an initiative to do what's referred to as floodline mapping. And we are working our way through that process, first by gathering data and to facilitate the mapping. And we're working, and I'm going to say deliberately or methodically throughout the province this year. We're hoping to get about a third of the province completed on the mainland aspect of the province. Next year, we'll be moving to the remaining third or half of the province. And then by the year 25-26, we'll complete the mainland Nova Scotia and make our way into Kipret and complete that process there. Those mapping facilities, or that floodline mapping program, will allow municipalities to be able to identify where there's a high risk of flooding. It will allow them to carry out their responsibilities on planning and land bylaws usage, and so to avoid those types of areas into the future. And also, it would also tell them where they may need to address issues where there's already currently development in those areas.
MLA Sheehy-Richard, 10 minutes.
And I thought I would just ask two, but I just want one more quick question before I pass it on to my colleague from Chester St. Margaret's. So is there a timeline for that floodline mapping to be presented to me? Like, have they received that information today, or is it still being done?
Deputy Rayfuse?
And so this year is actually, I think it just began in this year. So we're hoping that in this fiscal year, we will have the data collected for 1/3. I'm going to say we're going methodically across the province and progressively gather more data, allow the mapping to occur. There is limitations on how fast we can go on that because this is external resources and the availability of those types of experts. But by the year 25-26, the program will be complete. We'll complete the mapping. But as theirs are available to the municipalities, they will be provided to them as we move across the province, and they will have them for their use as soon as they're available.
MLA Barkhouse.
Thank you. As some of you may or may not know, Chester St. Margaret's was hit hard by the flood, and then the hurricane did a little damage as well. So this one's for Public Works. What is the department doing to ensure that our public infrastructure, roads, bridges, are resilient to the changing, repeated, and extreme weather patterns?
Mr. DeVoe?
Thank you for the question. Actually, we're moving forward, looking at the impacts of climate change every time we rebuild something, every time we design something. Our bridges are being designed to 100-year flood standards that have been adjusted to the climate change specifications. We're looking around right now, doing a lot of shoreline protection work with Armor Rock. We're looking at building up roads. We do have, we're looking at locations where we might need to do things such as realigning roads or raising roads, increasing the size of culverts, bridges as required by the design standards.
MLA Barkhouse.
Excellent. That's excellent to hear. So again, for Public Works, what is the department doing to better protect and consider the most vulnerable amongst us from future fire, flooding, storms, for people such as seniors, families with children, people with disabilities or limited mobility?
Monsieur DeVoe?
So we're doing a number of things on that. There's been a few committees, a few work groups, task forces that have been started. Ironically, one of them actually started before the floods in May. We started a group called the Pre-Storm Prep Committee. It includes members of our department, of course, of DPW, members of EMO, labor, skills and immigration, other stakeholders such as Nova Scotia Power. We're really looking at how we address these occurrences when they occur. I guess nature is a strong force, so we can plan as much as we can. We're always going to have a negative impact when we do get a very large occurrence. So this committee's work is helping us prepare when they do happen. We're working on having a kind of off-the-shelf book that we can pull off in case of emergency, that would have such things as templates on code of practices, deviations, such things like that. We've worked on doing jurisdictional scans with other provinces on items such as traffic control, for example. Traffic control can be very restrictive in the aftermath of these events, as it's limited compared to the amount of forces that come into the province to help. So part of these scans have helped us identify gaps with other provinces in the training that's required for the accreditation to be able to do that safely. So we're building kind of a reserve and training programs to be able to have a lot more, I guess, support when these happen. Part of this committee as well is even seeing the pre-event discussions and meetings with our stakeholders. At some occasions, we'll even have Environment Canada join our meetings to see exactly where the greatest impacts are going to occur. How do we move staff across the province, maybe in certain locations as required, as well as Nova Scotia Power and other stakeholders. How do they move their forces? How we can support each other. And really all this is done to make sure we're prepared. The ensuring the stock, as far as maybe culverts, bridges, gravels, other things like that we would need to address these situations, just to make sure that we're prepared in the best way of when we do get hit by such an event.
Emily Barkhouse?
I just have one more question before I pass it to MLA Taggart. I read a week or so ago that the feds aren't going to meet their target, so I'm just wondering, and this will be for environment, climate change, I'm pretty sure, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and getting off fossil fuels is critical to achieving net zero. Can you tell us more about work progress to green our grid and reduce GHGs? And it might be a couple of departments.
Deputy McEachern?
Yes, thank you. Happy to start in the answer to that one. So we're feeling, very positive about our trajectory on greenhouse gas emission reduction. So different than many other provinces, we actually have it now legislated in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. So that's really important. We're not only just setting the target, we're making it law by putting it in the legislation. So that's a really positive thing for Nova Scotia. And we're well on our way of achieving that target that's set out in the legislation. So we're a leader in the country on that front. We'll continue to do that, and a couple areas that I wanted to point out. First of all, our output-based pricing system that I mentioned earlier, that the province is in the process this year of fully establishing. That is a provincially created system in line with the federal requirements that is going to continue to and enhance placing large emitters accountable for their emissions and encourage them to decrease their emissions in Nova Scotia. So it's a really important piece that's well underway and will be fully operational this year. Another really important key part is the new Clean Power Plan. So that's the lead department for that is Natural Resources and Renewables. Not here at the table today, but that is a key piece that is showing how Nova Scotia plans to achieve that target, the various areas of renewable energy that will be focused upon, and over at Environment and Climate Change, we're seeing that. We're seeing many onshore wind projects come into our environmental assessment process There's been 8 this year. 2 green hydrogen projects have come through the environmental assessment process, and there's several other in the process right now, including the intertie between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. So there's a lot happening on the renewable energy front, and all of that is really critical to achieving our greenhouse gas emissions. So we're feeling our reduction targets, and we're feeling really positive.
Minute and a half. MLA Taggart.
Yes, I'm not sure what to ask here because I'm not sure you can get the question in a minute and a half there, so I may end up coming back to it. But I'm just wondering about Public Works, if I could, and if I have to, I'll come back to this next. But Public Works, how is your department maintaining infrastructure and eliminating dead zones, including ensuring cell service needs are reliable during extreme weather events?
Deputy Hackett?
Well, as far as during weather events, I mean, those things are sort of depending what happens and where you're at. However, the province has just recently taken an initiative to increase cell service across the province, and recognizing there's about 21,000 Nova Scotians that don't have access to cell service, as well as there's thousands or maybe 1,000 kilometers of a major highway that doesn't have good cell service. So the province has just recently went out with an RFP to the vendors that provide cell to allow them to take their equipment and go on to either provincial infrastructure or private infrastructure and towers across the province to help reduce those dead zones around the province. That RFP is on the street right now, and then we're looking at going forward, working with our partners.
Order. Time for PC questioning has elapsed. We will now move on to the second round. Each caucus will have 8 minutes, beginning with the Liberal caucus. MLA Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just some quick questions. What is the revenue projection for the Nova Scotia Climate Change Fund from OBPS, and when will the province receive it?
Deputy McEachern.
So thank you. I'm just maybe turn it over to my colleague Anthony, who may have something to add to this point. But I would like to emphasize that our process and our OBPS system is still under creation. So as you know, it was created in legislation in the last year. We're in that transition period right now where cap and trade is about to be complete. The Green Fund monies are about to be fully extended. We've had our last couple of auctions, and we will be fully transitioning into the OBPS system, and the climate change fund will be in place in the next year. So at this point, we're still creating those final pieces of regulations. So the first set of regulations under OBPS were passed, and that's to create the process by which the participants come into the system. So that's in place, and the next set of regulations are around compliance. And so to fully answer your question, we need those regulations in place, and they will be in place in the next short period of time.
Thank you. MLA Maguire has signaled he'd like to ask another question.
So just to
MLA Maguire.
So do you have any type of projection on what kind of funding is going to come out of that?
Deputy McEachern.
I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to be able to provide
Mr. Weatherby.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the question. In terms of specific revenue coming from the program, it's a bit too early to tell until the performance standards are finalized and fully established, so that will tell us what the emission reduction targets are for the facilities, and if they can't meet those targets, then they would have to pay. So it's hard to say how a facility might respond to a particular performance standard, and so if they can meet the standard, there won't be a compliance cost. So it is a bit too early to tell until those regulations are in place. We won't know what the compliance obligation will be.
MLA Maguire.
So hopefully we don't pull any money out of it. Everybody meets compliance, right? That's the best possible outcome. there is potentially money that's going to be generated by this, right? So I know in the past they had the EV incentive program. I have a couple questions around the EV incentive program just for myself. Like, did that program actually incentivize more people to purchase? Because $3,500 toward a electric vehicle is not a lot of money. But is there potential, and has the department looked at using that funding or finding new funding to top up, which I think was an extremely successful program, which was the solar program? We know right now that the money that people are getting for the solar program isn't really offset. Like, over the lifetime of solar, there isn't a great deal of savings. Like, we've talked to the industry, I've talked to individuals. I always use the example of, in the beginning, it was almost 50 cents on the dollar. And now it's much less than that. So with the OBPS program, is there potential to top up the the solar, residential solar program to make it more affordable for Nova Scotians? And if not, has the department looked at finding new funding to actually maybe bring it back to 50 cents on the dollar, which will incentivize more people to invest in solar?
Deputy McEachern.
So thank you very much for the question. I mean, we, just to kind of bring it back to the basis, we're very focused on the climate change plan and those 68 actions. That really is our guiding force and our motivation. A certain amount of funds will be generated through the OBPS system. As Anthony says, as the details get worked out and we, identify how those who are responsible act, with that system in place. We'll find out how much funds are generated from that. But our focus is on the climate action plan and seeing those 68 actions through to completion. And so that is the guiding force. And we have we have a commitment for those actions to be funded. So amongst those actions, there is some actions around solar, and there is a section of the climate plan that talks about a commitment to review the energy efficiency programs that are now in place and to look at any gaps, identify what needs to change. And so that is one of the actions. And so that's the work that we'll continue to carry out over now into the future in the climate plan. When we put it into place, we very much recognize that, climate, how to address climate change will change even within the 5 years that the climate action plan is in place. So it's a living and breathing document. We're focused on those 68 actions, and included in that is looking at the energy efficiency programs that are in place and what we should do to change and make them better and invest in other areas.
2 minutes. Emily McGuire.
So like a really easy suggestion like this, I mean, I know that is rocket science, but it isn't rocket science, if you know what I mean, is allowing and making it affordable for individuals to produce their own power. That is one of the ways that we're going to get people off coal and oil and all these different things. And right now, it used to be affordable to purchase solar through the program. It's not as affordable. So less people are looking at that. But also, especially in our urban cores, I know that I've talked to many individuals when it comes to multi-residential units where these incentives are not on multi-residential units because they don't believe that it gets trickled down to the residents. So I think if we really are going to be serious about getting off of coal and doing these things, we have to make it more affordable. And right now, 5 years ago, it was more affordable to purchase solar when you got 50 cents on the dollar on a $40,000 unit. Now you're getting like, I think the last I heard was like $3,000 to $5,000 credit, which a lot, I know that it's spaced out over time how you pay for it, but still that's a large amount of money to put on a homeowner, especially in the time of inflation and everything else going up. Will there be a focus, do you think, on multi-residential units and residential units when it comes to green affordable energy and making it actually affordable to build these units for residential units?
Deputy McEachern.
So yes, thanks very much. I think bringing up the importance of solar as a component of all of our efforts is really important. natural resources and renewables isn't at the table with us today, but I know if they were, they would have, quite a bit to say on this issue. That is really where the
Time for Liberal questioning has elapsed. We'll now move on to the NDP Caucus. MLA LeBlanc.
Thanks. So just getting back to my question, which is sort of oddly in line with my colleagues. It doesn't happen that often. So this the affordable multifamily housing program. So the AG did note that there was a low uptake on that particular program because of this thing that we heard about at the Community Services Committee, which is the split incentive issue. So, renters, many people who are paying for their own heat, they can't access efficiency programs on their own, and because they're paying for their own heat, the landlords are not incentivized to upgrade the buildings and make them more energy efficient. And so, what's the department doing to look at that? And so this is specifically about energy poverty, really, because generally that we're talking about old, slightly dilapidated buildings.
Deputy McEachern.
So yes, thanks very much for the question. Energy efficiency is very, very much key. There has been a great focus on that. As was mentioned, over the last number of years, over $200 million invested. We always should be looking at ways to make sure that those investments are done really effectively. We were really fortunate in Nova Scotia that we've got a standalone energy efficiency organization that is focused on this work full time and is making great gains. In terms of
Deputy, I'm just, MLA LeBlanc is signaling she'd like to speak. MLA LeBlanc.
Because there's not much time, I just want to know specifically about that particular program. So is the department directing Energy One, or Efficiency One, to look at that program and overhaul it? And are we looking at specific ways to help people in rental units to access efficiency programs so that they will be in less energy poverty?
Deputy McEachern.
Yes. Thanks very much. We are working on all of those issues. I have some stats in front of me from July's that says a total of 1,323 low-income homeowners have benefited from no-cost energy efficiency upgrades from both the home warming program and the affordable multi-housing program this past year, and those are totals as of July. So definitely some progress is being made. But as I said, we're always looking for ways to increase the effectiveness of our investments, and that is part of our action plan to continually be reviewing our energy programs and investing and having the most impact for those who need it the most.
5 minutes, MLA LeBlanc.
Thanks. And I will say that I really hope that my colleague is wrong about the solar thing, because I just got solar panels and I thought it seemed like a good financial investment. So maybe I'm wrong. So I want to go back to EMO for a moment. The Premier instructed EMO to meet with fire chiefs, police chiefs, municipalities to review the emergency alert system. We were just talking about this. Can you, Mr. Mason, confirm that the meetings took place? And what was the result? And will there be a review of those meetings that will be made public?
Mr. Mason?
Oh, certainly. The meetings did take place. As I touched on, there were 6 meetings. Some of the first 3 were regionally based. The second 3 were sector specific. So we met specifically with fire, specifically with police, and then once again with CAOs. So really the purpose of the meeting, was really to get their feedback on the system. It's been in place here in Nova Scotia for a number of years. Our initial policy on it was developed back in 2017. We revised it in 2021. And it was really to gather some feedback whether additional changes that could be made as part of continuous improvement per se. There were a few ideas which came forward. Those are currently being evaluated, and a final decision will be made on those at a later point. But those meetings took place, and we're evaluating the outcomes now.
MLA LeBlanc.
So am I right in thinking that the question of whether the Alert Ready system will be extended to municipalities or other organizations is part of those discussions? And so we don't know an answer to that?
Mr. Mason?
It was part of the discussion. Here in Canada, when it comes to the national alerting system, most provinces have a centralized system similar to what we have here in Nova Scotia, but there are decentralized systems in Alberta and to a lesser extent in Saskatchewan. So that's part of that discussion that we had. Currently, we've shared direct access to the alert system with the RCMP and HPD here in Nova Scotia, and we're open to that discussion with our partners. There's certain accountabilities that come along with it. It's not as easy to use as for say like a Facebook or a social media. It's somewhat prescriptive in how you interface with it per se. But at the end of the day, that was part of the discussion, and that will be part of the analysis going forward.
Emily LeBlanc.
Okay, that's great. I want to go back. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I want to go back to coastal protection for a moment. Deputy Minister, can you tell us who the vendor is for the consultation, the third-party vendor for the coastal protection?
Deputy Minister McEachern.
Yes, the vendor is Group ATN. Group GATN. Group ATN.
Emily LeBlanc.
Okay. So I want to ask a question about not the stormwater, whatever they're called, the ones that are in the water, but the ones that are like retaining walls on people's properties. Is that part of the consultation? So my question, is the Act going to contemplate making those illegal or because we know that when people have retaining walls that the stormwater or the water hits them and then the surges move down the coastline, and then if someone doesn't have one, then that's where the damage will happen. So is there is the Coastal Protection Act going to look at that part of coastal protection, and has there been any work thus far on encouraging property owners to change out their retaining walls to nature-based solutions for the surges?
Deputy McEachern, less than 1 minute.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. I want to be careful in terms of answering the question around the coastal protection legislation, exactly what it covers off, because I do want to make sure I give you the correct information on that. My understanding of the legislation is that it's just more broadly worded. It's about creating that coastal protection zone across the province and providing for the need to get authorization to build in certain places if the property in question is within that zone. So I do not believe that there's anything specific in the legislation that addresses that issue. Again, there's regulation, broad regulation making authority, and so that may be something that can be looked at as part of it.
Order. Time for NDP questioning has elapsed. We now move back to the PC Caucus. MLA Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, sorry, Deputy Hackett, I kind of got you in the middle of an answer. Is there anything more you'd like to add to that, or?
Deputy Hackett?
Yeah, I can add a little bit more to the answer. So, as I mentioned, an RFP has gone out to vendors to look at their equipment to be used on towers throughout the province. The province, the government has looked at the fact that cell service is important. It's probably an essential service in a lot of parts of rural Nova Scotia as well as in the cities. And they're investing about $47 million into this program, which would be to allow the vendors to get onto into the towers, and then this is being done through Build Nova Scotia, through Public Works, and then have a look at the cell gap coverage and what we're missing out of that, and then we look at a second RFP that would go out that would advance more towers into the system that would once again allow more vendors to come in and participate and put their equipment on these towers. So that way we'd hope to get a very broad cell coverage across the province. And going back to what you originally mentioned about storms and things that these events that we're having, hopefully over the next little while, we'll get this up and running, and hopefully during the storm events, these will help those on the EHS as well as the Nova Scotians and the public. So,
MLA Taggart.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Thanks, Deputy. But I got to move back to climate change, if you don't mind. It's kind of It's a bit of a passion of mine. It's certainly a current topic in Colchester North. And so, if I could, under the current climate plan, we have set some of the most ambitious goals in the country. In order to meet those goals, we understand we need to take a dynamic approach in producing green energy. So can you discuss some of the new technologies that are going to get us to 2030 and the role that onshore wind will play in sort of kicking that, that into gears, that sort of thing, I guess is the critical question I'm asking, is the role that onshore wind play initially. Thank you.
Deputy McEachern.
So, yes, very interesting question. I think really important. So, the Clean Power Plan that has just been released really articulates well the kind of resources and what will really be key to the transition in Nova Scotia. And so natural resources and renewables, as you know, is the lead for that plan. So I don't want to go too deeply into it without those great expertise here at the table. But definitely when we look at the plan, onshore wind is featured there quite prominently in the short term. It also just talks about how the fortunes that we have in Nova Scotia in terms of our positioning on the global stage, and the valuable resources that we have here with the abundance of wind and tidal and our proximity to ports. And so those are great advantages that we have in Nova Scotia. And so the power plan really talks about all of that and how we're going to meet the target that we are so focused on at environment and climate change, which is 80% renewables by 2030, net zero by 50, and so these are the kinds of things that will get us there. The other hat that we play in environment and climate change is as regulator for these projects that are coming in through. And I think I mentioned to one of the other questions, that we are really seeing, a huge difference in terms of what's coming in through the regulatory role. It had been many, many years, from what I understand, environment and climate change since a wind project had come through the environmental assessment process, which is that key kind of big environmental permit that's required for these projects to get off the ground in Nova Scotia. So it had been many years. We've seen 8 come through our process within the last year, and 2 green hydrogen, which are entirely new, and we made some changes to our regulations in order to, in fact, recognize the existence of green hydrogen and how it fit into a regulatory process. And so it's just been, significant in terms of a regulator, regulating through these kind of changes in Nova Scotia that haven't been seen in many, many years. And we've got a couple of other wind projects now registered as part of the process. And we've got the intertie, which is another key piece that's part of the process, environmental assessment process now. So some big changes happening in Nova Scotia. I'll leave it to NRR to really talk about the power plan, but it is key, and it is key to achieving the commitments in the environmental legislation that government's passed and in our climate plan.
MLA Taggart.
Yeah, thanks very much. Before I pass on to my colleague, MLA McDonald, I just got to say that, because of the role, I guess, that my constituency is playing initially, I've really become engaged in that, and it really is pretty darn exciting, what we've got ahead of us in the next 7 or 8 years. So, yeah. Anyway, MLA McDonald.
The chair does that, not you.
MLA McDonald, just under 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is going to be for Mr. Mason, but don't feel bad. It won't be as bad as the last time you were in front of me. Can you explain the Next Generation 911 and the update on it?
Sure. Mr. Mason?
And you got under 2 minutes.
Thanks. The next generation 911 system, 911 currently operates on a legacy copper line network. It's very stable, but it's reaching end of useful life. The CRTC is a national regulator. It's made a determination upon the various telecommunications companies that they need to move to the next generation system by March of 2025. The key difference is it moves from a copper line system to an IP-based system. So we're currently working and evaluating. We've had an RFP out. We're evaluating that now to select a vendor. That process will be done in the next few weeks, and then we'll execute the project by March of 2025. That's really phase one. It won't really be noticeable to users at that point. It'll just be more in the background per se. But what's interesting is once we're onto that system in phase two, it allows us to enhance interoperability by sharing information, video, pictures, all these different types of things amongst the public safety partners, for lack of a better term. That's really the project in a nutshell.
Mr. McDonald, you have 20 seconds.
So will it help the people that are close to the border grabbing the wrong tower and having the proper 911 quickly? Thank you.
Mr. Mason?
Yes.
Okay, 7 seconds?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much for everyone who appeared before committee today. Do the witnesses have any closing remarks? We do not have any closing remarks. It's a miracle. So I will just say that we're going to take a 3-minute break here so that folks can move out. I ask people to move out quickly because we do have a lot of committee business, and ask the committee members not to leave their seats. Thank you. Order? Order?
Peachy.
I call the meeting back to order. Okay, so let's move on to committee business. The record of decision October 4th subcommittee. Members have been provided with the record of decision from the October 4th subcommittee meeting. A motion was left on the floor at the October 11th meeting that we table this topic, Capital District Health Infrastructure Projects, with witnesses being Department of Public Works, Deputy Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, and the Deputy Minister of Health and Wellness, to a future date, an agenda-setting date for consideration, and that was moved by Mr. Young. So I will now open the floor for discussion on that. Emily LeBlanc?
Yeah, I just can't remember why, like, what was the reasoning?
I don't know that there was I think it was that MLA Young felt, and I don't want to speak for him, but that it was more properly dealt with at a subcommittee meeting where we do agenda setting. But MLA Young, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any further discussion on that motion? MLA LeBlanc?
When is our next agenda sitting meeting?
We don't have one scheduled at this time. We do have a number of topics coming up. It's probably in December? Likely in December. MLA LeBlanc?
Yep, okay, thanks.
Okay. So I guess we have to vote on that. All members in favor of the motion to table the topic until an agenda-setting meeting. All those in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Okay, then MLA McGuire, motion deferred from the September 20th meeting. And you have been provided with a copy of that particular motion. And the motion is that the Public Accounts Committee request the Auditor General look into this spending and the Partisan Act of Communications Nova Scotia. This is in relation to the letter to the committee from the Liberal Party leader and MLA Young.
Yeah, the Auditor General is independent, and I mean, the Auditor General can look at any matters if they wish, so we'll not support this motion.
I think we have the Auditor General has indicated previously that the committee can send requests. It's not, it can happen. It's not unusual or anything. Is that correct? We have our Auditor General here, and she is nodding. So it's, to quote Tom Jones, it's not unusual. Okay. So we will vote on that meeting now. Seeing no other hands for discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay.
Nay.
The motion is defeated. Okay. So now there was a motion left on the floor from the October 25th meeting, which was made in camera. Members have been provided, I see you, MLA LeBlanc. Members have been provided with a copy. We cannot discuss the motion publicly unless there is agreement by the committee to do so. Is there agreement to deal with the motion at today's public meeting?
Yes.
Yes. MLA McDonald.
So am I correct that this motion then was made in camera?
That's correct. That's why I said it was made at an in-camera meeting.
Oh, sorry. I had somebody ask me a question at the exact same time,
There
and I
we
missed
go,
that part.
hey?
Apologize.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, can I, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. MLA LeBlanc?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to do whatever I need to do to rescind this motion, or whatever you do to take it off the floor.
So we have to agree to deal with it first before we can do any of those things? So.
Because then we have to deal with it in the in-camera meeting.
Require unanimous consent. So it requires unanimous consent for us to deal with this in any way, shape, or form in this meeting now. Okay, folks? So,
Not unanimous consent to deal with it in the open meeting, but unanimous consent to rescind it.
But there has to be agreement to deal with it publicly. Are we okay with dealing with it publicly? I'm seeing nods all around the table. Yes? Okay. So we're going to deal with that publicly. Now, in order to, as per Mr. Hebb's interjection, could you please say what you just said for the microphone, Mr. Hebb?
To withdraw the motion would require the unanimous consent of the committee.
Emily LeBlanc, do you want to withdraw the motion?
Yes, I do.
Do we have unanimous consent for Emily LeBlanc to Mr. McGuire? Can I see a facial expression of some sort? Okay. All right. We have, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. And so the motion to withdraw the motion has been approved. Emily LeBlanc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move a motion. Make a motion.
We still have correspondence.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm going to deal with the correspondence, and I'm happy to take any motion after that. And also, your motion is noted, so even if we don't get it to it today, we will deal with it at our next meeting, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have correspondence from Finance and Treasury Board, the response to the PAC letter re-implementation of Auditor General recommendations. Any discussion about that? Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, follow-up information from the May 17th meeting. I think that's the one that I had the concerns about, because I did, there was, the answer that came back was, had squishy wording on it, I'll just say. It wasn't clear to me. I went back to the department, asked for clarification, got clarification on one part, but then, but not the other part of my question. So I'd just like to write back to say, can you just please tell us whether these were overages or underages? With the committee's consent, I will write back just to get that clarified, so we can put this thing to bed. Okay?
I'm not sure I'm where I'm at on this. I don't know.
You're just saying as chair, you can
Just do it anyway. So I'll just be writing back to request clarification again, because we asked a question and it's not up to them to decide whether it's material or not. Just answer the question. Okay. So Workers' Compensation Board, response to PAC letter re-implementation of Auditor General recommendations. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. The Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, information requested from the October 11th meeting, and is there any discussion on that? Okay. The annual report. Members were provided with the draft 2023 annual report. I think there was one change that we have made. Has that been sent out since the change?
No, I just noted it.
Yes, yeah, you did note it for, I wasn't sure if it was just for me or if you would send it to everybody. Okay, so it was that one meeting was in I'm just trying to remember.
I had one meeting noted as a pre-hearing briefing, when it was actually just an AG briefing. It wasn't on an AG report.
Okay. Emily Young?
I moved that the Public Accounts Committee approve the annual report.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Okay. PAC path forward. Before we get to that, I'm going to suggest that we go to Emily LeBlanc's motion that she wanted to make today.
Shouldn't we do the path forward first because it's on the agenda?
Can we just remove the path back forward for now?
Yeah.
I mean, we're meeting on the 6th, and so we'll have a wholesome discussion.
Yeah.
Are we all okay with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We will remove that since we are meeting on December 6th with the AG on that. So, because I'm seeing nods all around for that. So, Emily LeBlanc, the motion that you wanted to make.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make the following motion. Nova Scotia is experiencing a year of devastating extreme weather that is accelerated by climate change, and urgent action must be taken to reduce our emissions. Thousands of Nova Scotians continue to struggle with dramatic increases to the cost of living. Programs aimed at supporting energy-efficient retrofits, such as heat pumps, remain hard to access, especially for low-income Nova Scotians, and effective climate action must address the very real affordability concerns of regular people. Nova Scotians have had relief from paying provincial tax on home heating since the NDP was in government in 2010. I move that the committee affirm its support for the removal of all tax on home heating, the exemption of all home heating from carbon pricing, and a call on the federal government to improve access to home retrofit programs by doubling investments in these programs.
Okay. So I'm going to take a speakers list. LeBlanc, Maguire, Barkhouse, Taggart. Okay.
I did, yes.
All right. So I think there has been an email go around from the clerk with that particular motion. Okay. I think she just sent it out. Okay. All right. So, Emily LeBlanc, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, basically, it's a motion suggesting that we, as a committee, Public Accounts Committee, affirm all party, or not all party, but committee support for the removal of tax on home heating. So right now, we know that we've got a carve out of tax, or the carbon tax is coming off of home heating oil in Nova Scotia, but it's not coming off other fossil fuels, other types of home heating. So, natural gas or propane. And so this is in support of taking tax off of all forms of home heating fuel. And essentially it is a way to help Nova Scotians with the added carbon price that has been implemented by the federal government, and a way to address some of the energy poverty issues in Nova Scotia. So it doesn't cover everything off, obviously, but we've seen the federal government remove the tax from oil, and so we'd like to call on the government to do the same for other home heating fuels, and to also improve access to home retrofitting programs by doubling investments in those programs.
Doubling investments. And this is all home heating, regardless of income, is that correct?
Yes.
So I have a speakers list. Emily Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I support this theory, but honestly, I just received the motion 30 seconds ago. I literally just checked my email and I got it 30 seconds ago. I'd like some time to review it, to actually go through the details. One of the things that we talked about was the PAC path forward, and I know that my colleagues have been very supportive of a path forward and figuring out the rules and regulations around this committee. But one of the things that I've had members get upset with me, members on both sides get upset with me about, is all of a sudden putting a motion on the floor and nobody having time to review it because it's topical and because we just had witnesses and it was just written on the fly. And again, while I support this, the idea and the thought process around this, there's been many times where I just think when we were just in the legislature and there was a motion put forward around the carbon tax and sending something to the federal government to ask for the elimination of the carbon tax, and both the Liberals and the Conservatives, Progressive Conservatives, voted to send that letter, and the NDP voted against it. So, you know, I don't, it's, things seem to be changing on the fly quite a bit here. But I would actually say that I've been raked over the coals in this committee, in camera and outside camera, by both the government and the third party for doing exactly what just happened here today. And so I think we need consistency on how these motions come forward. And I don't think that the motion that was just read, I think maybe at the end some of the new stuff was added to that motion. So again, I'm not fully aware. We have to sit here in this committee and pay attention to what's happening to us, and I don't have time to check my emails and be constantly checking things. I think that what I would like to do is maybe put a motion on the floor that we are able to take a week to review this and come back and actually have a more fulsome conversation around this, instead of having these things sprung on us and having to vote on the spot without having any type of information on it. So am I able to put a motion on the floor?
I think there's already a motion already on the floor.
Unless he makes it in the form of a motion to defer this motion.
What's that?
The only thing you can do is make a motion to defer. You can't.
Okay, so I would like to, Madam Chair, put a motion on the floor to defer this motion so that we could at least take some time to review it and see what it's actually about. Like, I'll be frank with you, like, I know the member read the motion. I actually don't know what's in that motion. I have no idea what's in that motion. There was a lot of information just thrown at us. You know, I know that you as chair just asked questions for clarification, like, are we talking about low-income Nova Scotians? Are we talking about working-class Nova Scotians? Are we talking about wealthy Nova Scotians? Are we talking about corporations? Like, who are we talking about? Is this a tax break for every single person, whether they need it or not? And I would say that if we're going to look at something like this, that these things have to be more targeted to the people that need it the most, and that, you know, if you're making millions of dollars a year, I would dare say that you could probably afford to pay this stuff, whereas we have people that can't. So again, what I would ask is that we defer the motion, maybe get a little bit more clarification on it, maybe make it more targeted to people that need it the most. But right now, I don't fully comprehend or understand what's being put on the floor.
Thank you, MLA McGuire. I do have a speakers list here. I will just say that Ledge Council just leaned over and said, you know, I'm not clear on, you know, are we talking about carbon taxes coming off? Are we talking about all taxes? So there is some, he did raise the issue of some clarity on that particular thing. Okay, MLA Barkhouse.
Point of order.
No.
Just want to know, we now have a second motion on the floor. So is MLA Barkos now speaking on the second motion?
I'm speaking on your motion. I'm speaking on your original motion.
Folks, so
You're not
nobody, no. MLA Barkhouse has the floor.
Thank you. First of all, you know, we only got it 30 seconds ago. Third of all, it's partisan. It's not clear what they want, and it's out of the scope. So I call the question. I think we should just vote. Sorry, MLA McGuire, I don't agree with what you're saying as well. So I just call the question.
So if I have a speakers list?
People can debate.
Yeah.
It hasn't been sprung, that's why I was to speak on it.
MLA Taggart, you had asked to speak?
Just call the question. So what, it's my turn to speak.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
That's
So
right.
the question's been called, but it's my turn to speak.
It doesn't matter.
Okay?
It doesn't matter. You get to speak.
All right. So, well, I'm not going to, I don't believe this belongs here. I'm not going to support in any way, shape, or form or anything that has anything to do with it. I have no idea when PAC started setting policy. You know, is that really where we're at here? You know, and I'm sorry, but I mean, this is a great clip. It's kind of aspirational to talk about these great things, but this was in the House not less than 10 days ago. I don't know whether it got deferred or whether it got voted, defeated, or what happened, but the bottom line is, you know, we are, you know, we're way out of our bounds, and I'm up for calling the question too. Thank you.
So MLA Young, you don't want to talk anymore, is that correct?
No, I'm good.
Okay. MLA LeBlanc, you're on my list. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just to be clear, and I do think that this does need to be clarified, but this motion was sent to the clerk at 8:46 this morning, and the clerk sent it out as I read the motion. So before anyone gets mad at the member from Dartmouth North for just springing something on yous, it didn't happen from me. So it's a question of process that has to be taken up with the whole committee. It is not the NDP's fault or the members for Dartmouth North's fault that you just saw the motion now. Secondly, I'm happy to my colleagues' comments, I'm happy to defer this until next week so that we can take it back to our people and we can refine it or whatever. But I do think that there is a place at the Public Accounts Committee. It is not setting policy. Setting policy is not done in this room. Setting policy is done by the government, and this is an all-party committee. So what it is that it is the Public Accounts Committee affirming a belief in something or affirming something. So that is all that we are trying to do. We are not trying to pull the wool over your eyes or, or do something nefarious that was going to, cause the destruction of the province. We know that in Nova Scotia, people are suffering from the high cost of everything. We know we live in a rural province, according to the Premier. We know lots of people heat their homes with fuel, with oil, with natural gas, with propane. And in some cases coal, and so we are trying to move a motion that comes to the aid of people suffering energy poverty and people who won't be able to fill their oil tanks this year. That is all that we are doing.
Okay. MLA McGuire? And just to clarify, the clerk did not see that, and that's why it wasn't sent out. So it was. She doesn't want anybody to think that
I think we need to bring the temperature down a bit. Nobody's accusing anyone of anything.
I was still speaking, so just hang on here. So I just wanted to make that clear that what happened there. It's not MLA LeBlanc's. There was no nefarious plot, as she said. MLA McGuire.
Yeah. So I was saying, I think we need to bring the temperature down a little bit. Nobody's trying. I wasn't being aggressive. What I was saying is that I know in the past that when I brought motions forward like this, both the NDP and the government got angry at me.
Order. So, just for folks. Sorry.
You have to agree to extend.
Yes. Would anyone like to extend the meeting? No. I didn't even ask because I knew what the answer would be, but I do have to check. Thank you very much to the clerk for keeping me on track there. So, our next meeting is November 22nd, 2023. Our witnesses will be the Department of Advanced Education and the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Student Housing Needs. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.